And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
This is your Tampa Bay Rays RBLR podcast. It's good of you to join us this lovely Saturday afternoon. I am joined by a hopefully now unmuted Zach Darb. I am Pat Davenport. Zach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am a 26-year-old man who still doesn't understand how to not unmute himself in the year of our Lord 2025, which is great. But other than that, I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Pat?
It's all good. It's all good. I'm doing great. I mean, I know we're long past the era. Some people are long past the era of Zoom calls, but, you know, don't worry about it. It happens to the best of us. It's the magic of live podcasting. And do you know what's making me feel good today, Zach?
What's making you feel good today?
I'm not a betting man, but if I were to bet, I would put all my money on the number 20 because that is how many days it is until pitchers and catchers report for the Rays. We're so close now. If you had four hands, you could count on your fingers how close spring training is.
You can count if you use your feet, you can count just on your fingers and toes how many days until we have spring training beginning.
We have enough digits to do it. We have enough digits to do it, people. And that's the best news of anything that we're going to talk about today is that we're almost there. Soon we'll be seeing people walk into Port Charlotte and start throwing baseballs again, which is the best news.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about just before the show, this offseason, you know, we've been talking so much about, you know, the stadium and all this other stuff. It's so good to be back talking about baseball. We were talking just before the episode started, where are guys going to get assigned in the minor leagues? It's a real question that could have effects on the major league team this season. So it's just an exciting time to be a Rays fan because we're getting into the season. There's a lot of exciting stuff in the minor leagues going on. We are excited to talk about it with all of you that are joining us. Thank you for taking some time out of your Saturday to hop on and talk some ball with us. Really appreciate all of you. If it's your first time watching us, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy. If you're coming back, thank you for coming back. And if you've enjoyed the show previously, and if you like what we're doing here, do us a huge favor and like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, like us if you're watching on a social media platform, and drop a follow so you know when we're going live, when we're going to be talking about all this amazing stuff leading into the season. We're going to be doing previews for all our position groups going into 2025. We've still got a couple of player reviews to wrap up to kind of close the book on 2024, and then we'll open that book right up on 2025, and it's an exciting time. We're so excited to have you all with us. But before we talk about all of that stuff, we've actually got some trade news that happened. A blockbuster what commenced in this last week. A player that I was really it's really hard to see him go, cash considerations. Really tough to see that guy moving on towards Toronto. In return, the Rays get Brandon Eisert, a 27-year-old left-handed pitcher from the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, Brandon Eisert is a guy that I had not heard of before the trade, admittedly. He spent the majority of 2024 in AAA with the Buffalo team, but made 6 2/3 innings pitched for the Blue Jays at the big league level. And the thing that kind of stands out for me is two things: is that the average exit velocity, and the lack of hard contact against him is been really good. He's a big kind of limit hard contact guy, a bit of a ground ball pitcher, which is really exciting because, you know, we got a lot of throw and by you strikeout guys, particularly on the left-handed side, because I think Clevenger and Mason Montgomery are really strikeout heavy guys. This guy can give you a bit of a different look. He's got an insane kind of really wide arm angle. He's not quite a sidearm, but it's really far out there release point. And he throws a fastball, a slider, and a changeup. The fastball and slider are his main things, but he puts in the change often as well. None of them have crazy movement, but they do enough to miss the barrel of the bat, which is the main thing that you really like to see. So he's going to go onto the 40-man roster straight away, which makes it full, but we're going to see a couple of 60-day IL stints kick on once players have reported to spring training, which frees up a couple of other spots. But he's also got options as well. So he's just a nice extra option to have, especially on the left side of the bullpen, which I think we could probably done with an extra arm anyway. What's your kind of view on Brandon Eisert?
Yeah, it's another one of these guys that we see the Rays go after consistently, which is guys that are going to limit hard contact and allow the defense, which the Rays pride themselves on every single year, to kind of do what it's supposed to do and prevent runs along with the pitcher. So it makes a lot of sense based on the Rays organizational strategy of how to prevent runs to add more guys like this. I agree with you that we have a lot of strike them out guys. Clevenger is also a little bit more of a fly ball pitcher. Mason Montgomery actually gets pretty good ground ball rates overall, which is good for a guy with his kind of big stuff. But the more of those guys that we can, when we look at the way this team is made up, we want to prevent runs, and the way we want to do that is to take advantage of elite defenders that we have on the infield and then in the outfield. So it makes a lot of sense to bring in pitchers that play strength for the team. So yeah, it's a nice little move. The having options is great. It allows us to be flexible with him. The bullpen's pretty loaded, so it's going to be tough for him to get innings if everybody's healthy. But as we know, somebody's going to get hurt at some point, and I think he's absolutely a guy that could fill in sort of limited innings as needed. To if somebody gets hurt here or there, I think he'll be a nice guy to bring up. And as you mentioned, while he does take up a spot in the 40-man, we're going to get a 40-man spot back once everybody reports. And Nate Lavender is the one we know for sure is going to go on 60-day IL. We'll see if anybody else does, but that's the one we know of right now. So we would still have a spot open. Not sure how the Rays want to handle that last spot. If that means there's a move coming or something or other. There's still some free agents out there. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of this kind of offseason goes as we get towards pitchers and catchers reporting. If they want to make any other moves, they do have some freedom there. But in the short term, I like the move.
Yeah, it's nice. And I think there's something the Rays also like to do is to just get like as many different profiles of pitcher in a bullpen at any given time. So you're never comfortable with you're not getting the same type of pitcher twice at any given time. So you'll get, when the Rays bullpen is at its best, you'll get Diego Castillo with his funky delivery, followed by Jose Alvarado going with like crazy fastballs, but then you get Chaz Rowe, who has that frisbee slider and throws it all the way out from the side, and then we had who was that loogie that we used and like would only bring him in for one batter at a time. He was the Dodgers used him as a like lefty specialist for a while. I can see Adam Kolarek. That was Adam Kolarek, who is a soft throwing lefty ground ball guy. They were, and we can meme to death the kind of clock graphic that was used in the playoffs that one time where the Rays had all those arm angles. But they love to do that with their bullpen. Never let a hitter see the same profile of pitcher twice in the same game. And this guy has a unique arsenal and a unique release point, which will continue to keep hitters off balance and uncomfortable and gives you another option in a game. So all that it took was a little bit of cash and a 40-man slot. That's a great pickup if you ask me.
Yep, absolutely. And I the wrinkle in addition to the arm slot is also the velocity change for him. He's averaging about a 91 mile per hour fastball. We got a lot of guys with high octane fastballs in this pitching staff, especially in the bullpen. So anything you can do to throw hitters off, like imagine going from Mason Montgomery to a Brandon Eisert, that's going to really mess up your timing. So that's what the Rays do. They mess up people's timing. They prevent runs, and that's how we win games. And there doesn't really seem to be too much on the horizon to change that. That's how we're going to win games. And one of the things I think that really solidifies that is the other big relatively big news that happened this week, which is that Taylor Walls got an extension to avoid arbitration. There was some weirdness going on social media. He was clearly a little upset about the way arbitration went, which I can't blame him. He's been kind of an integral part of the organization, and he's really done everything the organization's asked him to do. And this is why, I understand the benefits of arbitration for both sides. But it always seems like such an icky process because you get things like this where you got a guy that is, I don't want to call him a cornerstone, but he's a very important part of your organization. He's someone you need to do exactly what he is there to do. at the level he's doing it in order for your team to be successful, and yet you're cutting him down for a couple $100,000. But we got past that, and we have now signed him to an extension, $1.3 million for this year, option for $2.45 to $2.45 million for next year, with a $50,000 buyout. Gives him a little bit of security and gets him paid for this year. You like the move?
Yeah, I mean, it does no harm. It does no harm at all. You never want to go to arbitration with a guy if you can help it, because it always feels weird when you have to go into a meeting where your employer tells you why you suck and shouldn't get a pay rise, but also please play well for us this year. Like, it just destroys goodwill between the team and the player. I understand why it sometimes has to happen, but if you can avoid it, you should avoid it. And I think it's good that a compromise has been reached on both sides. We can kind of move past the silliness that was on social media, because the Rays clearly value his defense and they like Taylor Walls a lot. I don't think many other teams would have given Taylor Walls the kind of runway that they have given him. He's got loads of playing time and they love his defense, even though it's not always backed up by traditional defensive metrics. We've talked on this podcast before why defensive metrics might not like Taylor Walls and why he's better than the metrics may suggest. But weirdly, I think the Rays may have used that against him to kind of go, well, you're a bad hitter. And the stats actually say you're a bad fielder as well. But secretly, we love your defense, which would have just been a weird thing. I think an interesting wrinkle to this whole deal is that it's a 2-year deal. When this is actually Taylor Walls' first ARB year that they're buying out. So 2 years actually only covers ARB 1 and ARB 2. He has a third ARB year that's not covered by the contract.
Right.
So to me, that says we're going to be done with you, and Carson Williams is going to be the full-time shortstop by 2027 at the latest. I think the club option is not going to depend on Taylor Walls improving at the plate. I think it's going to depend on, is Carson Williams ready for the full-time job yet? That's the only thing that's going to indicate the club option.
Yep, I think that's a really, really good point. And I wonder if, kind of to add on to that, by year 3, we're talking about Taylor Walls as not the starting shortstop, but as a utility guy, which is really, to me, I think where he would do the best long term, because I think he provides that excellent defense that he could play. He could play third, he could play second, a late defensive replacement where he's really bringing his elite skill set to the table, where it's the most useful for us late in the game. Because if you have a guy like Junior Caminero or someone else playing third who is elite with the bat, but you can maybe switch that guy to DH and allow Taylor Walls to go in and really bring his skill set to the table there. I think that's a really good spot for him on the roster, but it would probably result in him getting paid less when we look at ARB3 if we're saying, hey, the role you're going to be playing on our team and the role you played last year, by the way, because Carson Williams just came up and started most of the games, was a backup. So we're actually going to pay you this much because you're really just going to be a defensive replacement or a fill-in guy when Carson Williams needs to stay off his feet. So it'll be interesting to see how that strategy kind of plays out. We're about to talk about Taylor Walls' season last year, so we'll kind of parlay right into that. But he is a guy that I think deserves this money. I think he deserves the money for next year as well, because he's going to be providing, especially if he starts a lot this year until Carson is ready, he's going to put up like maybe 1 to 2 WAR probably in that time, just because he provides really good defense and he walks a lot. So he does provide some value offensively. He's just really bad with the actual bat in his hand, just relative to the expectations of this team from a production standpoint. He doesn't meet the snuff test offensively with some of the other guys we have on this team. But the value that he does provide is there. So I think he's going to more than earn that contract by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with him earning the contract by the end of the year. And I think for what he's going to produce, the value is there. I don't know if the Rays are going to keep a hold of him as a utility guy going into ARB3, because the way arbitration works is you're going to get a pay raise every year. By the time you get into ARB3, he's probably going to be wanting to earn around $4 million. I don't know if the Rays are going to want to pay that for him to ride the bench, when there's probably be another guy in the organization that can kind of fill in as that utility role. While I agree that would be the best spot for Taylor Walls and he would do really well there, I think the Rays, on a value for money standpoint, may move on from Taylor Walls once he enters that third ARB year and he's no longer under contract, unless another team-friendly deal can be agreed and it doesn't go to arbitration again, if that makes sense.
Is there a world where, because by that point, we'd be looking at the 2027 season. We'd be looking at moving into the new stadium very soon. Is there a world in which payroll comes up a little bit, just enough to where we can say, we think this guy has a lot of value, which we'll see once you have a hip surgery, we'll see how much value he can still provide from a defensive level. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that he's the same player defensively right now that he is in that offseason. Do you think there's a world where they say, hey, we'll actually pay just a little bit more because you're still going to be, well within the value point of what we're going to pay you for the production you provide, because we want to have that safety net behind Carson Williams, behind Junior Caminero to come and be that defensive replacement, because we're going to invest there because we think it's really worth it. Do you think there's a scenario where that could happen?
There is, but it also depends on who else comes up from the farm system as well. Because if Chandler Simpson becomes a super utility guy and can play the infield and the outfield and can field really well, that could be a thing. Or Dominic Keegan comes up, and then he becomes the super utility guy. Like there's a lot still to kind of see. There is a world where that happens, but I think that would only happen if nobody else came up. I do agree that Walls will be better than them at fielding. I just don't know if they'd rather just have a guy that's closer on team control and lower on money. But we'll see. We'll see. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I don't know if the Rays hold on to Walls past 2026.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. For now, we're going to talk a little bit about Taylor Walls of yesteryear. We're going to do a quick player review for him for 2024. The numbers on Taylor Walls are kind of a contentious topic, I would say, amongst Rays fans overall, because the numbers, when you just look at if you just were to scroll over to his FanGraphs page and take a look at what you would see there, there's not a whole lot that is like, wow, that's good. Negative 0.2 FWAR, 60 WRC plus, slash line that is below or just slightly above 500. That's the triple slash, the OPS. Just not good. He played in 84 games for the Rays last year. He had some injury troubles last year as well. If we're looking back at 2024 for Taylor Walls, what's the positive you would give for him for 2024?
Once he came back from injury, he didn't really get hurt again.
Yeah, that's true.
So he started the season on the injured list, missed the first 6 weeks or so of the season. Didn't really get hurt again after that. And did play good defense. He did play good defense. That will get backed up by outs above average or UZR or whatever defensive stats he could do. But the eye test told you that he played good defense. That's it. He made some good swing decisions. You know what? Something that is underrated about Taylor Walls is his swing decisions are generally pretty good. He doesn't chase that much. He will draw a walk. But that's about it. Like, you hope he draws a walk because that's often the best case scenario with Taylor Walls. I would say this is not his ceiling, though. I think he is capable of doing a bit better with the bat. I think he's probably more of an 80 WRC plus guy than a 60. And I think that's down to him still not being 100% right after the surgery. And I think there's a place where he does improve to around 80 WRC plus on the year. But that's about as good as it gets. The reason you like him is because he will probably cost you, I don't know, well, according to Baseball Savant, he cost the Rays 15 runs compared to the average batter in 2024. But I would say, you could argue, he probably saves close to that with his fielding across a full season. Again, Savant didn't like it because they use out above average to calculate that. But with the eye tests, I would say he probably is close to breaking even on the runs that he saves compared to the runs that he costs us with the bat. And he gets more opportunities as a fielder than he does as a hitter in any given game anyway. But again, he shouldn't be a starter. He shouldn't be a starter for the Rays. I think overall he is a net negative. But if he was an 80 WRC plus hitter, he probably is a net positive. But when he's this bad with the bat, he does hurt the team.
And just for some of the people that may be joining us for the first time or kind of checking back in after the offseason, we talked about this a little bit more because we've kind of realized, hey, we're getting Taylor Walls, so we better just accept that's what's happening in life for 2025. When we talk about the eye test for Taylor Walls' defense, I think sometimes people are would just say, well, you're just saying that because you want to be a sunshine pumper for the Rays and you want to say he's good. What we're talking about, and if you go to a Rays game, if you watch a game, even sometimes on TV, you can kind of see it, especially if you go see a game in person. What you will notice is you will see something that Taylor Walls does that is very similar to what Kevin Kiermaier used to do and still does do when he plays outfield for the Rays and where he's playing now for the Dodgers. He reads the batter and makes pre-ball in play adjustments to his placement to make plays easier for himself. As a result, the way that defensive metrics are calculated begins once the ball is put in play, right? Once the ball is put in play, they base where you started from to where you get to the ball, you make the play, whatever. All that is how it is calculated. Which that doesn't account for if you are a guy that is moving basically before the ball is put in play to put yourself in a better position so you make the play easier for yourself. And as a result, you don't really see, even when you're watching a game sometimes, you kind of think, well, everything Taylor Walls does is routine. The reason everything Taylor Walls does is routine is because he is starting from a more advantageous place than the average shortstop, and there's really no way to measure that. It's just, watching a game, if you watch the shortstop for the other team and then you watch Taylor Walls, you will notice, hey, wait a minute, why is Walls moving before the ball's in play? And also he's moving to the right place beforehand and then making the play. As a result, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. And what also kind of, I think, makes it even worse is when he does make mistakes because he's not getting the baseline, benefit of how good his defense is. When he makes those mistakes, they become a much bigger deal and even, further send him down because there's not the goodwill of how good his defense has been from a stat profile that will kind of balance that out a little bit because every shortstop makes mistakes. But generally, when you have like elite defensive shortstops, like Francisco Lindor, for example, what's going to balance that out is how good he is. And the metrics show that because of his athleticism and his arm strength, how good he is, after the ball's put in play. So when he makes those mistakes, it doesn't affect his defensive metrics as much. With Walls, when the mistakes are made, it much more negatively affects him. In addition to that, because of his lack of production from an offensive perspective, it even further mentally, not statistically, but mentally sets you back as a fan watching, saying, well, why is he out there then? That's very almost, you can book it. If Taylor Walls makes an error, you will see 10 to 20 tweets saying, why is he even out there then when he makes a mistake like that? And I think that's really unfair because yes, when he makes a mistake, it looks bad for all the reasons we just said, but the mistakes are few and far in between. And you don't get the benefit of seeing how good he is defensively because all that happens before the camera whips around to where he is. You're not seeing any of that. You're just seeing him pick the ball up and throw it. And you say, well, that was a routine ground ball. That's what he should be doing. All that to say, the 60 WRC plus really, really hurts. He has in the minor leagues been closer to a 120 WRC plus guy. Now, a lot of guys did that and can't do that at the major league level. I'm with you. He just needs to find a way to get it to an 80, an 85, a 90 WRC plus. Then all of a sudden, I think he becomes really, really valuable for this team. The problem and the thing that has really, really hurt him this last season is he just hasn't been able to do that. When we look at 2023, he was able to put up 0.1 F4 in large part because he was able to get to like an 84 WRC plus, and he had that 1 month where he was like really good offensively for his standards. And he kind of rode that throughout the rest of the season. We haven't seen that from him in 2024. We need to see a little bit of that from him in 2025 because as good as he is defensively, we just need to see a little bit more. And I think he can do it. And again, I'm not suggesting he's going to be a 120 WRC plus shortstop. It's just not going to happen. But I think he can, like you said, I think he can get to 80, 85. And then all of a sudden he's putting up maybe 1 or 2 F4 in a season. And you look and you say, I mean, that's okay. I think what hurts us as Rays fans, we've talked about this before, is we've kind of had to reset our expectations for the position in the short term because of the loss of Wander Franco. It's really, really hard to go from 6 WAR, 120 to 130 WRC plus elite shortstop defense to we're really happy with an 85 WRC plus and elite defense. It's just hard to make that change over. So I think that is sort of in the back of everybody's mind as a fan. We can be honest and say he's not an elite shortstop offensively, but we can also stop short of saying he's useless or he serves no purpose on the team, or they should just get rid of him. I just think that's unfair.
Yeah, I mean, let's just remember Taylor Walls was never meant to get this much playing time.
Exactly.
He was never meant to be the full-time starting shortstop for a successful Rays team. He was supposed to be, when Wander Franco needs a day off his feet, guy.
Exactly.
Or late defensive replacement, which is, like we said, where he would have been valuable. And I really liked how you summed up why defensive stats don't like him and why he is a better fielder than the stats show. I guess a good way to summarize that is he's like the opposite of Derek Jeter, where like Derek Jeter's reads of a baseball were really bad. But then that forced him into like these really impressive looking plays that he made harder for himself because he was bad at reading the ball off the bat. Walls is the opposite, where he makes plays look easier because he's so good at reading balls off the bat. So see it that way, where Derek Jeter, most overrated fielder maybe ever. Taylor Walls, maybe the most underrated fielder ever. Quite maybe. I think very at possibly. Least. But again, it's hard to believe unless you see it, I suppose. And you can't see it on a TV broadcast. So maybe if you're able, go down to Steinbrenner Field and spend a day just watching Taylor Walls.
One thing that I think is missing from MLB broadcasts that a lot of NFL broadcasts have, if you're a National Football League fan, is they have this thing called All 22, where they give you different angles of what's happening on the field. So you can like if you're a defensive guy, you're watching an NFL game, you can watch what your favorite corner is doing defensively to protect against a wide receiver, going off that day. I think that would be something that'd be really cool to have for MLB, to be able to watch the defense getting set and doing all of those things while we're just watching the pitcher and batter. Having another camera angle like that would be cool. And I think it'd be really good for Taylor Walls' reputation. So if you're Taylor Walls out there, you should be campaigning for an all 9, I guess, in this case, for or all 10, because there's 10 players in the field at any given time. All 10. We're going to call it all 10 broadcast for MLB games going forward.
I would love to see that. That'd be really cool. And we're riding with Taylor Walls for so long because, one, premium shortstops of Wander Franco's ilk do not come around very often. And you can't just go trade for one or sign one. Like, how much did Francisco Lindor sign for again? 300 plus million?
It was over 300 million. Yeah.
Yeah, so over 300 million. The Rays do not have that kind of buying power. And they are not willing to give up their complete farm for a guy that will be the shortstop for 2 to 3 years because they can't extend him.
Yep.
So you got to ride with Taylor Walls, but we're actually quite lucky where Carson Williams will hopefully be up at some point in 2025 and will hopefully be ready to take the job full-time in 2026 to kind of make it feel like, oh, we've just got another great shortstop. So who is the best defensive prospect in baseball, by the way. And so we'll, pick up Taylor Walls' glove and be similar to that, but also has way more offensive upside. So I feel like we should consider ourselves lucky that the Rays are the only team in baseball that can lose a Wander Franco and then 2 years later be able to replace him with a player that will hopefully be maybe not quite as good offensively, but like you won't feel that sting nearly as much.
Yeah, we've said it a couple of times. There's no other organization. Like if the Royals lost Bobby Witt, they're done. and we see what happens to the Yankees when they lose Aaron Judge. If the Reds lost Ellie De La Cruz, their organization is kaput. Like they very few organizations could withstand the loss of their cornerstone, especially at a premium defensive position. And like you say, like I don't even know what you would have to do to get Bobby Witt Jr. from the Royals. Like, I don't even know that there's an offer you could make that they would say yes to. I don't even think they would pick up the phone. Like, I really don't. Like, maybe if you wanted to trade Bobby Witt for Shohei, maybe they would pick up the phone. But like, that's pretty much the only scenario. And maybe not even then. Like, I mean, so they're just not available. So we are going to have to do a deep dive on Carson Williams sometime on the show, maybe either in this offseason or maybe during the All-Star break if we get some time, and if depending on how he's doing, because he is the future of this team, along with Junior. Those guys, those are your guys. Those two are what this team's future success rides on. You could be scared by that, or you can embrace it and be excited about that, however you'd like to do. In the meantime, since we are drifting from Taylor Walls, if you were going to give him a letter grade for last season, what would you give him?
D+.
I would probably say C-. And the reason I say that is because, and again, like, I'm grading on a curve a little bit here, because if he gives me the defense he gives me and he stays healthy and he puts up an 85 WRC plus, it's probably like a B+ for me. But when you lose him to injury, when you really couldn't afford to lose him to injury, and then he gives you 60, what did he do? 60 WRC plus 2024, it's got to be a C- for me.
Like, what would we give? Did we do a player review on Alex Jackson yet?
I don't believe we did, and I don't believe we will, because he's no longer with the organization.
So, like, what would you grade Alex Jackson? I think him and Taylor Walls had very similar seasons.
Yeah, I mean, like, Alex Jackson would be like a B, because like he did exactly what I asked him to do. He did exactly what I asked him to do, but he was really bad offensively. I'd give him a B. What would you give him? Give him a
Alex
C?
Jackson a B? I would give
him a B.
I would give him like at best a C-.
Well, because so here's the thing. You like if we're grading him on the standard of Adley Rutschman, yeah, he gets a D, but like he's not Adley Rutschman. I can't grade you on the scale of the greatest players, and like that'd be like grading. It's like if we were going to grade Josh Lowe and we were going to grade him on the standard of Aaron Judge, he gets a D because he's not Aaron Judge. So to me, I grade guys on what my expectations are and what guys of a similar profile can do. So he gets like a B because I think he, in very weird circumstances of him coming up and down, and when he was there, he did exactly what you asked him to do. But he wasn't great, so I wouldn't give him an A. I'd give him a B-. Maybe I'm being too nice, but like he was really good when he was around at the role he was supposed to do.
I mean, one thing I asked him to do is like hit the ball one time.
Well, listen, he's not an A player. I get it. But like, I don't know. You gotta like, I wouldn't give him a D. I'd give him maybe I'd give him a B-. Maybe I'm being too nice.
Okay, maybe Alex Jackson, because he helped unlock Taj Bradley for a month, gets a C.
See, that's the thing. He provided something that no one else in the organization was providing at that time. That's got to be worth something.
In more ways than one.
Well,
yes. Alex Jackson, we've defended on this show, right? Yeah. We have absolutely defended on this show. And like, as a defensive catcher, he's completely fine. But I don't know. I feel like I want to have a debate at some point, not today, because we got too much other things to do. But at some point, we got to like ask the question of like, if you were the best fielder in the world, like let's say Kevin Kiermaier, how low does the WRC plus on Kevin Kiermaier need to go before he's net hurting the team?
What do you guys think? If you're watching the show right now, tell us what you think. We'd love to know, because I think that's a really good question. And I think that's something that we will come back to sometime in the future, because that's a good question. And I fear that if we answer it, we'll be here for the rest of the episode and not talk about the other players we're supposed to talk about. Something else I want to talk about is shop.rblrsports.com. No read into this because I just think we need to get right to it. Because if you need to improve your wardrobe, just go to shop.RBLRsports.com. It's that simple. Doesn't need to get any more complicated than that. The best merchandise inspired by your favorite Tampa Bay sports teams: Rowdies, Bucks, Lightning, Rays, Sun. It's all there. Shop.RBLRsports.com. Promo code FLAPPY, FLAPPY for 10% off your entire order there. Shop.RBLRsports.com.
Yeah, we don't need to debate whether or not they're useful to your wardrobe because we know they are. That's a closed book. Someone who isn't a closed book and is got a lot of upside, but also a lot of downside, and we're not quite sure where he's going to fall, was the marquee trade acquisition at the major league level the Rays made in the 2024 trade deadline, and that was Christopher Morel. Yep. Christopher Morel actually had the worst WAR on the 2024 Rays. He had negative 0.8 Fangraphs WAR, which is worse than Harold Ramirez, by the way.
Ouch.
Twice as bad as Harold Ramirez in one more game. Ramirez played 48 games. Morel played 49. A lot of that was down to his absolutely atrocious defense and unable to find a positionness of him. But also like the offensive upside that's clearly there from him did not manifest in his short stint with the Rays in the back end of 2024. So let's start with you, Zach. If we're talking about Chris Morel, I don't think 2024 is the place many Rays fans want to start.
No, and I think a big part of that is because what we want from Morel is power. That's his calling card. It's power. And he hit 3 home runs for the Tampa Bay Rays in 49 games. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Not really sure what happened. I really am only left to call it a fluke and just really bad luck because I can't, I don't really know what happened. It's very, very strange because he's never had a complete power outage like that before. He hit 18 home runs in the first 103 games with the Cubs this season, and then he only hit 3 for the last 50. That doesn't work. If he continues in that way, he will find himself in Durham in short order. If he has options, which he does, he has one more option for this year, so he can go back to Durham. So that's where he will find himself if he continues to play like that. We do not expect him to play like that, and really it affects the rest of his game because so going back to Taylor Walls for just a second, if we go to Taylor Walls and all of a sudden he just is bad defensively, well, there's no reason for him to be on the team then because that's his calling card. When you have guys like Morel, like Walls, who are they're not a one-trick pony, but their primary source of value is in one aspect of their game. If you cannot provide that, you're just going to have a hard time cracking a major league roster. When you look at the other things that Christopher Morel does well, he walks at an okay rate. He works pretty well, but even that was worse with the Rays than it was with the Cubs. So he just kind of played worse overall. And who knows what that might be? Is it just the change of scenery was unexpected for him? And even though he did seem to gel well with the team, maybe he just wasn't ready for that change. Maybe it was something with the trop. Maybe he had the Willie Adames problem where he couldn't see in the lights. I don't know. It just seems very, very out of character. When I see a guy like that have such a out of character performance, I'm kind of left to the only thing you're really left to believe is that it was a fluke or that it was just bad luck or some other element that we don't know because there's really nothing in the numbers that tells me what went wrong. We're just kind of like, well, I guess he just was bad. So the question then becomes, as we're looking forward into 2025, is that the version of Christopher Morel that we're going to get? Because if so, that Isaac Paredes trade is going to look real bad going forward. And we got even more questions to answer about the outfield.
Yeah. I think imagine if Taylor Walls couldn't field comparison is a really good one because for all intents and purposes, Morel and Walls put up the same WRC plus last year in a Rays uniform anyway.
They almost put up the exact same 59 WRC plus. And again, because Morel is not a great defender, you see the negative 0.8 F WAR.
Yeah. So literally last year, Chris Morel was if Taylor Walls couldn't field, which is awful. That's so bad. Very bad. But you're right. You're right in that like the tools are all there. He hits the ball most of the time insanely hard. His bat speed is elite, and he does draw his walks. He doesn't chase that often. I mean, he's not Juan Soto in there, but he doesn't chase that often. What you are a bit worried about is the lack of contact he actually was making when he was swinging. He had a 34.1 whiff percentage, which is really bad contact rate. It was almost reminiscent of Jose Siri when he was bad. Is that like you see the power potential there, but he's not making contact enough.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Is that a fluke? You'd like to hope so. You've got to hope so if you're a Rays fan. And there are signs that he's not that bad. I mean, in 2023, when he was hitting the ball harder, he was still whiffing 37% of the time, striking out 31% of the time in 2023. But he was hitting to a 247 average. He was making contact a little bit more. And that's what he's got to do. He's just got to get the ball in play a little bit more. And you can hope for something. But you're hoping that it was just a bad run of form, a slump. But he doesn't have that money in the bank yet. That, like, say, when Randy was really going through it, that you go, well, we know he's capable of better. With Morel, we've still never seen him quite fully put it together in the way that the Rays are hoping that he would. So the pressure's kind of on, and I think he's kind of got 2025 to work it out. And if he's this bad in a full season of 2025, it's hard to justify him still being on the roster. He's going to get a run to be the starting left fielder next year. And we've already talked on this podcast before that, Randy was a pretty bad fielder in left field. So you can kind of, if you're going to hide a guy and have to play him in the field, left field is probably the best place to do that. But I don't think his fielding's ever going to get better. So you just got to hope that, like, he doesn't get the ball hit to him that often, or like he doesn't make a boneheaded decision, like dive for a ball and then miss it and allow an inside the park home run. And you hope that you can, like, utilize him in a way where you take advantage of his really good arm, like a UNS Cespedes, where he can drop the ball but then throw a guy out. Like that's the scenario for him.
And if you look
at the Rays, the Rays really like this guy, and they wouldn't do that if there wasn't something there. Like, they wouldn't give up Isaac Paredes unless they thought this guy was worth it. So they've seen something there. What the adjustment is going to be to get him to a point where he's like a 120, 130 WRC plus guy, which is what he's going to have to be to justify his defense. He has to make it this year, basically.
Yeah, and going back to your point about the defense, I think Steinbrenner Field is actually going to help him a little bit, because you can put Josh Lowe in right field and know that he's pretty much good out there. So when you think about Johnny DeLuca in center, as a unit, you could say, I don't even have to worry about anything going on over there, because I know Josh has got that, because he is an above average fielder in right field. And so he'll be just fine over there. Got a good enough arm, got great, above average speed. He'll be just fine there. So I think you can actually have Johnny DeLuca help a little bit Morel out when needed, from time to time over there, because you know that you've got that kind of locked in a shorter and less surface area to cover in right field. You can devote Johnny DeLuca helping over a little bit to left. So I think he'll be fine enough out there. There was a highlight of Morel making a great catch, which was a nice catch, but the route to get there was suboptimal. That was kind of floating around this offseason for him. So you made all the, I think I completely agree with everything you just said. When you look at like what the things that are concerning from last year, contact down almost 13% from his time with the Cubs, which means that he was swinging outside the zone right around 26%, which is like not great, not horrible. It's like, it's okay. But when you're swinging, if you're making no contact at all, that really hurts you. And then the zone contact was down just a little bit. So you're 100% right on the contact being kind of the issue with him. The question will be, can he fix that? And if he can, he's going to get a really, really good shot to be the starting left fielder, because the power is undeniable when he's making contact. And that's really been his calling card his entire time in the major leagues, is the power. So we'll see. To be continued on him. If you were going to give him a letter grade, though, for his limited time, and it was a very limited time with the Rays in 2024, what would you give him?
It was a small sample. D.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's either incomplete or like a C- or a D. It just wasn't very good, and I think he would agree with you. Like I would think if you asked him, were you happy with your performance there? Probably not, because I think he knows what he could do. I think the team knows what he could do and believes in him. I don't think they've given up on him at all. They're definitely going to give him that run. It's one of the reasons why spring training is going to be so exciting. Is to watch guys like that fight for spots. And speaking of spring training being exciting. That applies to the next two guys we're going to talk about, Curtis Mead and Jonathan Aranda. Both guys that are kind of fighting for the same roster spot. Mead has the benefit of he can play third and second, well enough. The glove is fine. The arm is maybe leaves something to be desired. So both of those two guys, were up for, similar amounts of time. Mead played 38 games with the Rays in 2024. Jonathan Aranda played 44 games with the Rays in 2024. The difference being Aranda hits to a 113 WRC plus in 2024, that's pretty good. And it's kind of showing what we always saw with him in the minors, kind of finally started to figure it out at the major league level, whereas Mead is still sitting at a 67 WRC plus. What are your thoughts on these two guys for last year?
Aranda started to convince me that he belongs on the major league roster, and for a time had us convinced that if a really good offer came in for Yandy Diaz, we wouldn't quite be as dead as a team than we would have if we traded him, say, at the deadline.
Yeah.
So you go, well, actually, there's an avenue for Aranda to get some DH and first base time there, and you'd be quite happy with that because he has so much potential. He makes great swing decisions. He has power. He makes good contact, but can't really field that well. But can do enough at first base to be fine. Which is all you need at first base, really. Meanwhile, Curtis Mead did nothing to help kind of improve anyone's opinion of him in 2024. My stock in him I feel like I've been a Debbie Downer this episode, but my stock in Curtis Mead decreased in 2024. In 2023, I was like, hey, there's a world where Curtis Mead could take a really good utility role, maybe play third base for a while. He's a really interesting role player. Now I'm like, he's not got long left until I'm okay with him not being in the organization anymore. He definitely deserves one more run out to see if he can make those adjustments, because that was his first, consistent run of major league playing time. But there were no signs of anything great other than serviceable defense at multiple positions for Mead last year. I think he's capable of way more than that, but yeah. He needs to show me that in 2025. And if in 2024 and 2025, you wonder what his role could possibly be on this team with an already crowded infield mix.
And I think what really hurt Mead was the meteoric ascension of Junior Caminero, because I think there was a world where you kind of were expecting Mead to slot in. If you traded Isak, Mead was the next guy up. That changed once Junior Caminero became the best, the top prospect in the minors, and now is, one of the most exciting players looking into 2025 for the Rays. It's really hurt Mead's, viability. And the fact that guys like Brandon Lau and Yandy Diaz are still on the team, again, if you move Brandon Lau and Yandy, which I think a team would be net worse for that, the likelihood is Mead is your starting second baseman, Aranda is your starting first baseman, right? But those two guys are still on the team. I think the team's better. I think it's really hard for Mead to get at bats, more so than Aranda, which is funny to say because Mead has more versatility. I think if Mead could somehow learn how to play shortstop, he might be able to take Cabby's spot on the roster. But because he can't, you kind of have to have Cabby because you need someone to play shortstop. So it's a really weird kind of situation that Mead has found himself in, whereas Aranda, the bat it seems like it's finally there. When you look at the most most places are projecting him for like a 120 WRC plus in 2025, and I kind of agree. They're also projecting him for like 80 games played. The expectation is that Aranda is going to be playing games in the majors. The expectation is Mead will not, and it's tough because I do think there's some value there, and I think there are teams where he would start and be pretty good. I think he could get to maybe a 110 WRC plus for a team and play pretty good defense at third and second base, be a really nice utility type guy. Maybe not the super utility because he can't really play the outfield and he can't play short, but have a utility swingman role where he could provide that value. It's just a tough ask to get on the field with so many guys, that are really good in the infield. The elephant in the room, though, is the injury status of Brandon Lau, because the moment Lau goes down, that's Mead's opportunity. And I guess when we're looking, and we'll preview this more as we get closer to the season, which will be sooner than later. If Lau is hurt, Mead has to take advantage of that opportunity to cement himself as a major league level guy. If he comes back up again when Brandon Lau inevitably misses 10 to 15, 20 games, and he doesn't come in and knock it out of the park, which is it's really rough to say that. It's hard to put a guy in that small of a box, but he's just got to be ready. He's got to be killing it at AAA if that's where he starts, and he's got to be ready for his opportunity.
Yeah, that's it. He's in the unfortunate position of got a time bomb on his back, because if Carson Williams not far away, Braden Taylor could be moving up sooner rather than later. We've already got Lau, Diaz, Caminero already here, who you're not going to knock them off the starting spots. So yeah, you've got to wait for a Brandon Lau injury, which will happen. Like, there will be a point where Lau needs to spend some time on the IL.
Yeah.
But, Jonathan Aranda gets reps sometimes at second base. So it's going to be tough for me to find at bats. And like you said, he's got to take advantage. And the problem is he's not particularly stand out at anything.
Yeah.
That also hurts his case. Like, even Morel, you go, well, he's got that elite power potential. Mead doesn't have that. He's also not Luis Arias. He's not like elite contact guy.
Right.
He's not Taylor Wall's elite glove guy. And he's not Chandler Simpson elite speed guy. He's just kind of like decent at everything. But that's not what the Rays value a lot of the time. They like big tools in big spots.
And I think if there weren't so many guys that were either cemented at their position or, like you say, that had that big tool in this organization, he would be getting a lot of run. But he's just it almost feels like he is the right player for the wrong roster, is what it kind of feels like with Curtis Mead. Because I think he is ready to be a contributor at the major league level for a baseball team. I just don't know if that's the Rays.
Yeah, and I guess spring training is also really important for him, how well he shows up in spring training, because, again, the battle for the final roster spots are Aranda, Mead, Eloy Jimenez.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough, and Eloy Jimenez and Jonathan Aranda and have both have way better potential with the bat than he does. So he's got to hurry up. But also both of them can't field, so he has that on them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough for him. I almost suspected that if the Rays wanted to make a gutsy move and trade for a Luis Robert, I could have seen him being packaged in that deal. But it looks like the Rays aren't going to make that kind of move and give Mead one last chance. But we'll see. I mean, if I were to grade Curtis Mead's 2024, I don't even want to throw a letter on it because he didn't play tons of time. But it's more like hey, go try again.
I agree. I'm the same way. I think the thing that's interesting with Mead is let me take you this scenario. Mead doesn't really find any roster space for the first half of 2025. Let's say he tears it up in the minors. Let's say there's Morel doesn't quite do what we expect him to do, and we're having some trouble. We need an outfielder. It's clear, but the rest of the team's performing pretty well, and we're in the playoff hunt. Maybe we see a scenario where Mead, we could say, hey, we've got a major league ready third baseman or second baseman that can provide real value for you. Package him with a lottery ticket and go get an outfielder at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, so Aaron Savali had really high trade value. Well, not really high, but decent trade value when we acquired him because he was on a really good run with the Guardians, and was more than a rental. And Kyle Manzardo was a on fire bat, but not much else in the minors, at a position that wasn't a premium, but like, you know, he was fine. That was enough to get you Aaron Savali. So like, what could in-form Curtis Mead get you at the deadline?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think we'll have to see. I think I would give Aranda an A because when he was up, he did exactly what I wanted and expected him to do, and he finally started to show some of that form that we've seen for years at AAA. He started to finally do that now at the majors, and I am really excited to see because I think he's going to get, like, spoiler alert, I think we're going to see Jonathan Aranda on the roster to start 2025 because I think the bats it's too good to leave in the minors, and now we've seen it at the majors. I think we're going to see Aranda to start the season on the Rays roster. So if, you know, we could still say and complain because he only played 44 games with the team, but I would honestly give him like a B+ or an A- because I think he was really good, and he started to really show it last season.
Yeah, and you can't really blame him for the injury either because it was a hit by pitch that busted his finger, right?
Totally
so
random.
Like, yeah, that's not like his body failed him. That was like a pitcher was careless, and it was unfortunate. And it was a really unfortunate time because he was just about to land an opening day roster spot, and then he got hurt in spring. And it, you know, when you hurt your hand or your wrist, it can really mess up your bat for a while. So it did take him a while to get back to kind of major league speed. But once he did, he was fantastic. And none of the setbacks were his fault. So yeah, I was really happy with how Aranda did. I was just a bit gutted that he got hurt when he did.
Yeah, it definitely was a dampener on a season with quite a few of those last season. But here is to less of that happening here in 2025, which is coming so soon. And 3 shows from now, we're going to be talking about Rays players in Rays uniforms playing on Rays baseball fields. I mean, it's exciting stuff. We're so excited to go into the next season with all of you. Thank you all for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, do us a huge favor, like the video, like us on social media, follow us on all the socials so that you can know when we're dropping new episodes, because the content's only going to get more exciting as we get closer to the season, and we're really excited to bring it all your way. It's going to be an exciting season one way or the other for the Rays, and we hope that you're going to be here to enjoy it with us.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting season. Lots of uncertainty, but lots of optimism as well. So until then, Rays up.
Rays up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.